Welcome to the museum. We are very honored that they've chosen to use our facilities for this presentation. I'd like to introduce some of the people, our guests. Let me see. Merrill Craft, our city councilwoman. And we have 3 Rangers from Fort Lewis, Sergeant Major Julian Chavez, Jr., Major Ross Daly, and Command Sergeant Major Don Boyer. We also have representatives from Congressman DeSaulnier office, and also from Assemblyman Fraser's office, Sean Kearns and Ryan Thomas. Would you come forward? They have certificates to present to Gil. Yes.
I'll use my Marine Corps voice. Can all of you hear me?
Yeah.
As stated, it's an honor to be here on behalf of the Congressman, especially veteran to veteran. Thank you so much for all of your service. The Congressman wanted me to pass along a certificate of congressional recognition to you. There's also a letter in here. Just to highlight one specific portion, H.R. 906, the Marauders Congressional Gold Medal Act. The Congressman is very proud to be co-sponsoring that act.
And on behalf of Assemblymember Jim Fraser of the 11th District and Assemblymember Tim Grayson of the 14th District, I'd like to present you with the certificate of recognition in honor of your admirable bravery and remarkable leadership. Thank you so much for listening.
And without further ado, I'll turn this over to Bob Howland.
Hello. 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 Okay. So thank you. I want to thank Dorothy for the introduction and for the certificates that were presented here today to my father. I'd like to just see how many World War II veterans we have here in the building, in the audience. One right here. Okay. And any descendants? My bad. Any descendants of World War II veterans? Great. And do we have any Korean War veterans here? Right. All right. And any Vietnam War veterans? And we have our active duty 2nd Ranger Battalion members here that have already been introduced, and the Rangers hold a special place in my father's heart because the Marauders were given the Ranger designation, and they're the legacy unit for the 75th Ranger Regiment, so he's very proud of that. So we would like to thank everybody that came out. I mean, this is overwhelming. This was like going to be just a stop and look at the sign, and it turned into much more. And I have to thank from afar Joni Clayson, whose father was a Marauder, who put together the program, made all the calls, and was sort of the backbone of getting this thing done together with the Pittsburgh Historical Museum. So I'd like to make sure to mention her. I gotta make sure I'm in the light so I can read it. It's a great honor for my dad, Gilbert Howland, and I to be here today from New Jersey, and to be accompanied by my cousin, Vernon Howland, who came, and his wife, Julie, who came all the way from Australia. It was the death of my dad's nephew, Brad Howland, a Vietnam War veteran, that brought all of us here to California. Earlier today, we attended a memorial service for Brad in Fresno. Our trip has made it possible for us to honor his life and to spread his ashes in San Francisco Bay tomorrow, which is what we'll do. He loved the Bay. It has also given Dad the opportunity to be here in Pittsburgh to commemorate and honor the 75th anniversary of Merrill's Marauders mission in Burma by placing a wreath under the Camp Stoneman sign. The mission began on February 24, 1944. Over, I don't know if you know this, 1 million soldiers went through Camp Stoneman out to the Pacific War Theater. Today, Dad is unfortunately one of only 13 original Merrill's Marauders who are still living. In 1943, he was one of 2,000 Marauders who passed under Camp Stoneman's sign. Remember, they picked up 1,000 out in the Pacific, but 2,000 passed through Camp Stoneman, and they were all volunteers from the Caribbean and the United States, and all they were told was this was to be a top secret commando mission, and they were not expected to survive. They expected 85% casualties, but these guys volunteered anyway. Those 2,000 volunteers stayed briefly at Camp Stoneman here in Pittsburgh before shipping out on September 21st, 1943 on the luxury liner. The SS Loreline, however, was Battleship Gray at that point, for an unknown destination, and they didn't know what the mission was. If you looked in your program, there's a little story there from Bob Passanisi about how he found out where they were going, but he couldn't say anything, and he did the nightly radio show. So every night he would sign off with Song of India, trying to, hint, hint, but nobody got it until they got there. I'd like to take just a few minutes to tell you about the man, my father. He has had the good fortune to have two wonderful wives. My Italian mother, Andrina Dobrigna, who he married in 1948 while stationed in Trieste, Italy after the war, and Jean Anderson, who he spent 41 years with after they were married in 1974. But above all that, I think Dad has been and still is, first and foremost, a professional soldier. Perhaps his desire to enlist in the Army at age 18 stemmed from the structured environment of the Hillside School for Boys in Marlborough, Massachusetts, where he and his younger brother Vernon were raised. So they went there at the age of 5 and left there when they were 15. Vernon fought with the 1st Marine Division at Guadalcanal during World War II, and then moved to Australia eventually, where he had met this wonderful Australian whack. And so he resided there until his death. The Hillside Creed, this school that my father went to, was an all-boys school. It did have one girl, though, the superintendent's daughter. She was lucky. The Hillside Creed stressed, so we're talking, my father went there in 1931 and came out of that school in 1941. The creed stresses loyalty, honesty, responsibility, courtesy, and fair play, together with the importance of being a gentleman, having faith in God and your fellow man, and never doing anything that will cast a blemish on your country, your school, or yourself. And I have to say, it is a creed that he has lived his entire life. My dad fought in 3 wars, making him part of a rare group of veterans who have earned 3 combat infantry badges. In 1984, he was honored at Fort Benning, Georgia, for being one of only 325 to earn a triple combat infantry badge for World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. His name today is on the wall at Fort Benning National Infantry Museum with these 325 men. Dad was inducted into the Army Ranger Hall of Fame at Fort Benning in 2017. He will be at Fort Benning in July for a Ranger Rendezvous, and there are currently 28 Merrill's Marauders in the Ranger Hall of Fame. Just 2 weeks ago, Dad and I were in Florida for a week of golf. He's a golf fanatic. We played 4 rounds in 4 days. He shot a 92 on the last day. He said, I finally shot my age, or under my age. Later this year, Dad will be traveling to Washington, D.C. with some other Marauders to help gain support for bills in Congress seeking to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the Merrill's Marauders. A bill has already been introduced into the House of Representatives, H.R. 906, and their Senator Isaacson, I believe, from Georgia, will be introducing the bill on the Senate side. So we're hoping that it being the 75th year and everything else, that we'll finally get approval for the gold medal for these men who served and the 13 that are still alive. So now here's the person you all came to hear, my dad, Gilbert Howland.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a long trip up here from where we were this morning. I thought we'd never get here, and I'm looking for the river when I get halfway up, and I still can't see it. But just parking out here, I know it's right over there, the harbor and everything. It's so long ago that I took a trip down the river. It seemed forever, but I was occupied by gambling, and I did win a few bucks. But I want to say a few things here. Like my son Bob just said, I want to thank everyone in this room for being here today. I am a very lucky man to have this many people show up. It is the military war, honor, and family that have brought all of us together today. Well, maybe some of you just came to see if I could stand up and had my faculties together at 95 years old. In a few days I'll be 96. But you're here, so I want to thank you all for being here today. It's just wonderful to come back to a landmark that I so long ago took a ride down the river. This morning in Fresno, my family and I were able to honor my younger brother Vernon's son, Brad, who was a Vietnam veteran. And now all of you are here to help me honor the 75th anniversary of my 44th Marauder combat mission in Burma. I am very touched by your presence today. More so with the fellow soldiers that participated in 3 wars lately. When I passed under the Camp Stoneman farewell sign in 1943, I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be back here. But here I am, and things look a little different today. Camp Stoneman is gone. No one is trying to give me a shot or make me do KP duty. My unit, as you know, was formed under the directions of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He asked for 3,000 jungle fighters for a mission. And my unit shipped out on Aurora Line in September 1943, as I said. She was painted battleship gray and did not look anything like the luxury liner you see on the program. Years later, in 1959, I was back on the Aurora Line, sailing with my family to San Francisco. After 3 years stationed at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. If you remember, the Japanese flew over Schofield Barracks through Coley Pass and practically demolished the Navy that was in the harbor there. I, at that time, was in the service. I was in Panama. I volunteered by seeing a sign in the South Boston Post Office. There was a sign, and I happened to be down there that day, and I looked, and the guy was pointing right at me. And he says, "I want you." I took that serious. And the next day I volunteered, and 10 of us put on a train and trucked down to Camp Stoneman, and everybody got a yellow fever shot. But there I failed because I couldn't stand up after I got that shot. I just hit the ground. And of course, they picked me up, and we all got on a ship and sailed to Panama. It took a week to get to Panama in that freighter. Yeah, I have my maintenance man with me here now. I want to tell you some things about my life. In 1943, still have not changed. I still get up at the crack of dawn. It makes it hard on my son sometimes when we're traveling. But we adapt. I'm sorry, Bob. Wake you up.
He got up at 4 o'clock.
I spent 30 years in the military, and sometimes the 3 wars I fought in all run together. But some memories are as sharp as they happened yesterday. In India, two of my buddies and I were two of my buddies and I were worried about how our family should be notified if we were killed in Burma. So we all got a tattoo on our wrist. It's on this side, I'm sorry. G.H.H., Gilbert H. Howland, in that village in Burma. I've got that with my 2 buddies. In northern Burma, we had to hack our way through the jungle and mountains. I was in the 2nd Battalion Green Combat Team, in charge of 16 men and 2 .30 caliber water-cooled machine guns. I was the section leader. 16 men. They were my responsibility, along with other things. The 2nd Battalion was pinned down and surrounded on a mountaintop by the Japanese for almost 2 weeks at the Battle of New Punga. It was up on the top of a mountain ridge, and the last part of that ridge is where there was a small village. And our commander, Frank Merrill, we happened to move back that direction. And because the Japanese were planning other things for us, we got back to after telling us that there would be no more bear running down the trail. You would get to New Punga and you would stay there and hold that top of that ridge, that mountain. that went down into a valley of rice paddies down there in the river. For almost 2 weeks at Mpunga, the Japanese had us surrounded. They came in on us and they surrounded us. Prior to that, what I had done was guard 2 trails while they got the position ready. I didn't have to dig 2 positions, one on the west trail and one on the main trail leading down through the north. But the positions were dug before I could leave trail blocks in case the Japanese decided to come down the trail right into the town. Halfway through the battle, I was wounded by the artillery fire. The Japanese had artillery 75s, and they were open up. There was a few trees around, and the burst hit the tree and hit me in the shoulder, and I did a somersault and landed on my back, and just almost knocked me out. And the medical center was there. We had Dr. Hawkins. He wasn't a young doctor. He was about 55 or close to 60. And he took care of that Green Combat team as the doctor of it. He pulled me and put me in a slit trench. And I was there, as I said, for almost 2 weeks. There was 2 units trying to get through to us. 2 combat teams were trying to get through to us. And I would like to say, I skipped the page. Today there are only 13 originally Marauders living out of 3,000 men. I wish some of those men could be here with me today. I am now back to where I started from in 1943, Stone, right outside where that ferry was waiting for me. For being here to help me on my 1944 combat mission today. I'd like to say a few things for the active duty soldiers that are here today and are stationed at Fort Lewis. I spent 3 years at Fort Lewis before I was discharged by the Army in 1945. I had gone home on leave and came back to Fort Lewis, and lo and behold, the first sergeant of the unit said, "Don't unpack, go back to Fort Devens, you've been discharged." And I said, "I don't want to be discharged." And he said, "All right, but you still don't want to go back to Fort Devens," and I did. And I went back to Fort Devens. And what did I do? I re-enlisted, and at that time, they needed men in other type units. They made me an MP. The 393rd MP Battalion. Their mission at that time was to form 3 groups. One to Fort Lewis to Seattle, one to Chicago, and one to Detroit. The only trouble for the next 6 months was that the unit that was in Detroit, there was a riot. The union hadn't been paid for months, and it was a big riot, and that unit went in. I was at Fort Lewis, and there was no action there. I had 3 scout cars. Every one of them had 230s and a 50 on them, and that was for riot duty. A lot of firepower there. The first scout car had a radio in it. And of course, one day we maneuvered with regular troops. Well, we were regular troops too, but we were trying to form a unit. 393rd MP, and we got out on maneuvers, and they captured everybody but me. They captured 3 scout cars and all of it. By the time I got back, they were gone. We'd like to sign off by saluting every veteran in this room. Thank you for service. Rangers lead the way. If anybody fought in the Pacific area, they probably remember General Douglas MacArthur. He went up through Korea, and I was in there when he was in Korea. And later on, Truman fired him to get a new general to take over his job. And MacArthur came home to Washington, not with his tail between his legs, but he got up in front of the joint session of Congress, representatives and senators, and gave a speech. At that time, I had been chosen to be a security guard on his hotel room where he stayed while he was in Washington. And I happened to be honored to listen to him on the TV in that apartment with his housekeeper. And he gave a good speech. He really pushed it for the Army. And you all remember what he said. Old soldiers never die. They just fade away. Yep. And I thank you all.
All right, so at this time, could Dorothy Kearney please come up? The Merrill's Marauders now present to the Pittsburgh Historical Society the very first plaque that has been created for the 75th anniversary of the 1944 Merrill's Marauders mission, which began on February 24th, 1944 in Burma. This plaque is to say thank you. And so that visitors to this museum can read it and know that World War II Merrill's Marauders, who fought in the China-Burma-India theater, which a lot of people didn't know we were there, because it was a secret mission, were once at Camp Stoneman. And we have one other. My dad had a wreath prepared to mark, it's an honor wreath to mark the time that the Marauders were here, and he would ask Dorothy to help him place the wreath under the sign. Through this portal passed the best damn soldiers in the world. Thank you. So what we thought we would do is everybody have a program. Everybody got a program? My dad'll sit, and if you want to talk to him briefly or ask him a couple questions, or if there's general questions right now, I think my dad is like a lot of World War II soldiers. Once you get him talking, they never stop. So buyer beware. All right? So thank you.
If you have a question, raise your hand.
Anybody have a question?
I brought by coincidence, my last name is Merrill. This is my grandfather. He was a colonel, and he led the first convoy through the Burma Road. So he could not have succeeded without the work that you did.
Before we went into action, we walked up the 110 miles of the Burma Road. There was a road built onto the Burma Road. The Japs had cut the Burma Road. Those supplies were going up to China.
And that was their mission, to get the supplies to China on the Burma Road. And he lived to be 85 years old. He did World War I and World War II. 85.
He was a young fellow.
So, thank you very much. Thank you.
So just, can you just repeat one more time your, what?
Yeah, oh,
It's on.
it's on? Oh, okay. All right. So, I just briefly, my last name is Merrill, but that's completely coincidental. That was a husband's name. But I brought photos of my grandfather, and my grandfather, his mission, he was a colonel in the Army for World War II. World War I, he did World War I and World War II, they dragged him back in. And he led a convoy. His specialty was trucking, and he led the first convoy to generate the supply route to China, going over Burma Road. And without people like his team, maybe his mission would not have succeeded.
We had to march up that road. 110 miles was built when we got there. We had to march up that road. Then when we got up there, we tried that old trick of, at night, building a few fires. And then we pushed off through the jungles at night. You really don't want to be in the jungles marching at night. You're going to have trouble. And we had a lot of trouble. We had mules fall off the trail. We had to go down and get the equipment. If they get hurt enough, we couldn't use them, and bring the equipment up and put it on another mule. But as the night wore on, then all of a sudden, the group in front of me, they weren't there. It was just like they disappeared. And I didn't know there was two forks in the trail. And I was Black Label at a SWAT box. And I had Black Label calling, unit separated, I am holding here. And pretty soon somebody from the INR platoon came back, intelligence and reconnaissance platoon came back. They was always a point for us. They came back and led me back in, and we joined up. But it was because a guy like me should have known the right trail.
Any other questions? Yes.
Way over there.
I was just curious if there's a recommended book or movie on the period of.
There were two movies made about the Marauders. There was the 1948 Errol Flynn Jump into Burma or something like that, which showed the Marauders parachuting into the jungle. Never happened. So it was. And then in 1962, there was another movie, Merrill's Marauder, with Jeff Chandler playing General Merrill and Ty Harden playing one of the main characters. And that was considered by the Merrill's Marauders great. They did the movie, but kind of left a lot of stuff out. So we're trying to, there's like some groups trying to do a really thorough documentary about the group that's been filming stuff and talking to all these guys that are still alive and recording them and trying to get it down on, Witness to War and sites like that. So the main book that I would recommend, however, is Gavin Mortimer's book that came out in 2014. Unfortunately, it's no longer in print, and if you go on eBay or Amazon and want to buy it, it's like $40 to $80 to buy that book. Gavin, we know Gavin really well. We talk to him a lot. He lives in Paris. He's trying to get a new publisher to put out another, printing of the book. So we'll see. I think you can buy it. You can buy it as an ebook for like $8.99. So Gavin Mortimer. I think somebody here I saw had the book.
Yeah, I brought my copy.
Yeah, let me.
To get him to sign it.
So it's Merrill's Marauders, the untold story of Unit Galahad and the toughest special forces mission of World War II by Gavin Mortimer. Another? Oh.
Another book. There's another book that's about the same.
Yeah, there's been Ogburn, one of the members of the unit. Spearhead by Hopkins is like a thorough. Which is that one?
Charlton Ogburn Jr.
Yeah, Ogburn's book is great. Spearhead is like, it's 500 pages. But it's more like the technical and gives you who was wounded when and in what action and everything. One of the biggest problems they have with the Marauders is the records have disappeared because a lot of the records were carried by the mules, and some of the mules like got hit with artillery and got blown up, and the monsoon season with the rain, stuff doesn't survive. So, anything else?
One other thing I want to tell you. The Japanese had artillery. Now the question is, our supply people were thinking back there, well, if they have artillery, why don't we have artillery? So they went out and found 375 howitzers, took them apart, and threw them in and dropped them to that rice paddy below Naga Hill, where they had us trapped for about 2 weeks. They dropped those artillery pieces there, and our men that were trying to break through to us put them together. And lo and behold, I'm up there on top of that hill in a slit trench, and before you know it, there was 3 rounds going this way to the Jap, and 1 round coming back right over us. Back and forth, back and forth. Until we had P-40s in our area, and P-51s, and P-38s, all fighter planes. And 4 of them was on our communication setup, and they came in and they took care of things. Didn't get any for our children after that. They broke through to us, relieved us.
We got another question. Go ahead.
This is kind of a weird question, but your mules were so important to carry all of your additional supplies and so on. Did the mules get malaria or get sick, or were they pretty resilient?
Before I give them, the question is the mules that you had about 700 in the whole outfit. Were they resilient? Did they get sick? How did the mules work for you?
The mules worked very hard for us, but the thing of it is, you have to go, before we went in, we had a ship out in the Pacific Ocean coming to us loaded with mules. And you know what happened to that ship? There was little ships underwater waiting for it. And the Japs torpedoed that ship, and all those mules hit the bottom. So what we had to do is screen all of India and other places to get mules, horses, or anything to get the animals that we needed to carry our equipment. If you can remember a machine gun has a box, a metal box, and there's 250 rounds in that box. And when you put 4 of them, 1 on each side, that's 8 boxes on a mule. That is a load for that mule. But they did it, and they came up with, your question is, they've got sores on the backs. And we had people there to treat those sores for those mules that had swords, with that saddle going back and forth. And taking care of the mules was very important for us. We had airdrops. I'll tell you another incident where we were on that mountain again, getting back to that mountain. And before they broke through to us, our rear echelon boys got busy again. They came over, we weren't getting any water. The Japs had our water hole. It was just a drip off the side of a little ridge there. So they dropped us fried chicken and apple turnover. And I swear to God, I had my apple turnover. I'll tell you, they dropped that to us. But they just a little slot like that, the C-46 coming around and trying to drop that load right there on that thing, they couldn't do it. The Japs got some of our chicken. Not only that, there was water dropped. Big cylinders of water with a heavy steel clamp on it, and that dropped right down because we were just about out of water.
Any other questions? By the way, there was a mule in the outfit, I think you can Google this, called shrapnel. Because this mule kept getting hit with shrapnel with the artillery. And they nicknamed him Shrapnel, and it's legendary, so to speak, in the Marauders. Yes.
Did they actually do training at Camp Stillman?
Did you do training at Camp Stoneman? Camp Stoneman, here. Camp Stoneman. When you first got here to Camp Stoneman.
It just amounted to physical training. We didn't have we had everything we were waiting on, the men to assemble, getting the equipment on, mortars, machine guns, and ammunition and all of that. But we didn't have
Dyson. You trained at
Gambleville.
gambling.
well, I did a lot of gambling. The ferry going down from here to San Francisco, and I won some money. We gambled on the Lorelei. We was on the Lorelei for 30 days, and we picked up 500 men at New Punga,
New Caledonia.
New Caledonia. We picked up 500 men of the Merril division. I don't know if any of you guys were in the Merril division, but they were the first to go into Guadalcanal with the Marines. And we picked up 500 of the men because they'd already seen Conga. And we wanted to fill up a complete 3,000 troop for FDR and our president at that time. And I know you're all Republicans and Democrats, but if we had FDR with us right now, you know, and not that guy up there, I hate to say it.
You can edit that out.
Republican.
Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you, Gil. I'm a docent here at the museum. My name's Louis Esposito. And we always try and find little stories that we can tell, especially the children that come in. Your secret mission was definitely a secret. We had no idea that you were part of the Camp Stoneman era. I guess, you know, great job on keeping it a secret, first of all. Second of all, it would be neat, in a few of us talking together, it would be neat to know if there were any other secret missions that we don't know about.
The big secret was FDR put out the word that he wanted 3,000 jungle fighters. At that time, I came in the Army and volunteered in April of '41 for my 18th birthday. They sent me to Panama. I had jungle school. I went to jungle school during that time, from April to Pearl Harbor, which happened in December, I was in Panama, learning to be a jungle fighter, raised on a machine gun, homed on a machine gun, and wound up going in as a corporal in combat, and later taking over 16 men, 8-man squads, and training them. All the things I had learned in Panama.
Why don't you were asking for a story. Why don't you tell them the story of what happened in Puerto Rico?
Oh, yeah. What happened in Puerto Rico, after I had been over there sometime, I was going home on leave. I got to Puerto Rico, and a colonel from the DA, he came down, he was an Army colonel, and he says about the 3,000 jungle fighters and all of that. And he says, those that volunteer will be flown back to the United States. Those that don't volunteer would have to wait for a ship. And at that time, there was few ships stopping at Puerto Rico with all the submarines around. So what happened was, I volunteered, but at the same time I was being sent home on leave. And they flew me to my, 124 of us volunteered out of 500 that were going home on leave. And I was one of them that volunteered, because I wanted to be with these soldiers that I had trained with in Panama. And I did,
So you got to Miami, and what happened? What happened in Miami? Did you go on leave?
No, I didn't get my leave. I spent 3 or 4 days in a hotel on Miami Beach. Beautiful. And one morning I was wakened, the whole bunch of us was wakened by somebody singing. And it was this song you all know, off we go into the wild blue yonder. The Air Force was coming down the main street in platoon formations doing their PT. And we all looked out the window and gave them a raspberry. Get out of here. They paid me back because they took all of us and put us on a troop train. And 4 days and 4 nights later, we wound up in San Francisco.
Oh, here, yes.
It haunts me at San Francisco. Yeah.
Any other questions?
One thing I might say too, if you remember Camp Stoneman, you must have read the newspapers there, possibly?
Well,
When you were
the only
here?
thing I can remember was the entertainment we got at Camp Stoneman.
Okay.
Louis Prima.
Yeah, not bad.
The lady was with him, and that was a band.
Smith, yeah.
The big bands were playing then. Benny Goodman.
Yeah, what I was leading up to, Gil, is if you read the newspaper while you were at Camp Stoneman, we got a guy over here, Frank Hurtado?
I was in the 50s. I was in,
No?
no. This was
You didn't sell him the paper then? Frank used to sell papers on Camp Stoneman. I got the era wrong. Oh, maybe Jess, maybe his brother Jess.
Any other questions? Yes, one more. We'll take one more and then you can
So
circulate
what
up.
year did they come back to Camp Stoneman, or did they?
They never came back.
Okay, because I was at.
They, 3,000.
Camp Stoneman.
Oh, he's here. 2019. What happened to the unit was they did have a high, 85%.
Never came back.
The unit did have a high casualty rate. 85% were either killed, wounded, or most of the guys were struck down by the dysentery and malaria and that they suffered, so that by the time they captured that airfield, the all-weather airfield that was so important in Burma, there were only about 150 of them able-bodied that were left, and they were all shipped back kind of individually back to the States. So they never had their closing formation, they never got their medals like as a group, they never, they just went off into back to the States. And that was it.
I would bet that you were very happy that he made it back.
My mother was very but he didn't meet her till later, so that's another, we're doing World War II, don't start on that. Yeah, one more question.
I'll tell you something about coming back from Burma. This was a doozy. I caught malaria on that big airfield up in northern Burma, and I took the night duty, and the mosquito, it was raining, it was May, June, April, May, and June were the rainy season then. And it was raining, and the mosquitoes were biting the hell out of me. I stood at the machine gun, and I heard something out there in the high grass. And I didn't know what it was, but I tripped the trigger a couple of times, and it stopped making noise. The next morning I goes out, and I looked, and here's a water buffalo. A water buffalo. I killed the water buffalo. But those mosquitoes got me, and I caught malaria, and was sent back for the second time to a hospital. And then came back, and they sent me to that airfield. First time. And,
So, one more question. Yes?
So you mentioned that high fatality rate. My mom's father, my grandfather, was a marauder, and he was killed. He was a replacement marauder that came in after a lot of his brothers were depleted. He flew in end of May 1944, and he was killed June 5th. So he was only there maybe 2 weeks before he lost his life. But my mom went her entire life not knowing her father, which was the case for most of your brothers. I mean, probably, 90% fatality rate for most of the people that serve there. So we're so excited to be here, and I just wanted to thank you for serving there and for the recognition that you're bringing to the Marauders, and for that part of World War II history that I think is so largely unknown. So excited to see that you're here today. And this has been a big hole in my mom's life. Not ever getting to know her father, and I know that that's true for so many other people that serve with you. So I just wanted to recognize my mom and thank you for what you're doing.
The thing about that mission at the end, when there were only about 100, 150 able-bodied Marauders left, and once they took the airfield, they just poured troops into their planes and supplies, but they had taken the town. The Japanese, 6,000 Japanese were in the town, but the Marauders had the airfield, which was critical. And all these guys came in, and that's when they started the action to try and push the Japanese. And that's where there were a large number of casualties. And eventually, by the end of June, the Marauders just got folded into the 475th. And that was the end of the mission. Wanted to say something else? One more? This is it.
Okay. I wanted to tell you about a guy who was my brother. He enlisted a year after I did. He was 1 year younger than me. And he wound up in Paris Island, and then he went to, of all places, Guadalcanal. He was in the artillery unit in Guadalcanal. And I always remembered him. We had the school I went to when I was in grammar school. I made the baseball team there, and he was an outfielder. And I always got a kick out of him because he was a little chubby guy. And he would run around the bases, and by the time he got to third base, he was out of breath. He couldn't run, but he made it home. And he was my brother, and he made Guadalcanal. Not only that, he got malaria. I had malaria, he had malaria. They sent him home on a medical. And years later, after the GI Bill and marrying an Australian lady, he died of Alzheimer's disease. Just like my wife died of Alzheimer's. And things were kind of bleak then. One thing I want to say to you, all you Army guys, Army strong! None of that.
On behalf of the Pittsburgh Historical Society and all the people that are here, I want to thank you so much for coming to Pittsburgh today. It's an emotional thing. Where's the mayor? That's the former mayor. She's on the city council now. They take turns.
No, I'll be mayor in 2020, I was mayor in 2017, and then I'll be mayor again in 2020. No,
What I wanted to say is that Mr. Howland is going to sit here, and you are more than welcome to come up, talk to him for a minute. He'll sign your program, and we have refreshments in the hallway back here. So, you know, help yourself back there and come and talk to him.
We'd also like to thank the Rangers for coming down from Washington State. Appreciate you being here. And, sure, go ahead.
Of course, these are the Rangers that came from Fort Lewis, Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you for, one, having us here, and Gil, you know, it's an honor always to be in the presence of, you know, such legends and heroes as Gil and some of our others in the crowd, all the veterans present in the room. Just like to say thank you from 75th Ranger Regiment, 2nd Ranger Battalion. One theme that we've heard throughout the night is, you know, Gil is one of 13 left, but one thing that all of us in the 75th Ranger Regiment, you know, we wear the Merrill's Mortar crest as our unit logo, as you can see, you know, from his board that they had in the CBI theater. We wear it every day to remember these men, as well as on our beret flash. All these different colors represent the colored combat teams. Like Gil mentioned, he was on the green combat team. So even though there's only, you know, he's one of 13 now, every single day across America and across the world, there's Rangers still wearing the memory and remembering our forefathers who really set the groundwork for us, following in your footsteps. Even though you guys made some giant footsteps, we're trying to fill them. But thank you, Gil, for creating the legend and the legacy for us young Rangers to follow.
Amen.